Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're doing something different. We're looking at Lightroom, and I'm going to be taking you through my editing workflow in Lightroom. So we're in Lightroom. We already have a photo open. This is from the recent shoot I did with Lianne. If you haven't checked out her content, her accounts, I'll link down her Instagram. Do check her out. She's an amazing model to work with. So let's get right into it. Once we get into Lightroom, we're going to be working with this photo. We head right into the Develop tab. One of the first things I'll do is, well, first of all, we want to level the image, right? So we want to head on over to the Transform panel and hit Level. And it should auto level it, but sometimes I'm not happy with what auto does. As you can see, I feel like it's a bit off. So I will go ahead and make some minor adjustments right there. Awesome. Now, another thing I'd want to work on would be the crop. Now, I think this might look good as a 4:5 image. No, not really. So we'll go back to the original and probably just crop that side out a bit, and I think that looks great. Awesome. Now we get to the good stuff and actually editing, or editing the colors at least. So exposure on this does look good. We're looking at the histogram now. Just to briefly go over the histogram, and you can see here the left hand side shows the black, so this is what is on the image, right? This will be our shadows, this will be our midtones, our highlights, and the whites. So we have a lot of highlights and a lot of whites. They're not clipping yet. So if it goes beyond the right side and it's white, when we bring down the exposure, we don't get anything back. And if you look, there's a lot of highlights, a lot of whites, mainly because it's a bright day on this shot, right? And what we want to do is we want to pull back some of those highlights, because we want to get as much detail up here and even down here. This bottom section is bright. I will also pull back a bit of the shadows because we're losing a bit of contrast, and I'd want to put in more black, or bring down the blacks, as they'd say. I'll push up the contrast ever so slightly, and I might actually just drop the exposure a bit. And that is to my liking. If we go in at 33%, yeah, that is to my liking. Now, as for the colors, I'd want to add a bit of saturation, just a bit. I want to kick up the vibrance. That looks great. Now, do remember, this isn't a one and done thing. I might come back, you might come back and make more adjustments here. But from this section, I'd head over to the tone curve, right? So I want to bring this. So the tone curve, just like the histogram, it has your blacks, your shadows, your midtones, your highlights, and your whites. And the tone curve looks good, but you can do a lot of different things here. You can drop your blacks for a more contrasty look, and you can try to maintain your midtones over here, right? You can bring down the highlights there, yeah. You can do a few different things. Maybe your midtones aren't as bright as you want them to be. You can kick that up. Add a bit of contrast by bringing down the shadows a bit more, probably pushing the blacks further here. Yeah, there. So if we go back before the adjustment to the point, to the tone curve, have a before and after. So big difference. This looks a bit flat. This looks a bit punchy. This isn't the final thing I'll do with the tone curve. I'll come back and play around, but I usually put a bit of an S, or sometimes I'd actually even do a reverse S curve to flatten out the image and then make more adjustments on basics, but we'll stick to this for now. And we're going to want to go to the HSL, right? So the HSL is hue, saturation, and luminance. And it'll break down the range of colors. And you can adjust the hue. You can shift the color. You can change how saturated it is or how bright that color is. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into hue, and you're going to notice a lot of my photos actually change the saturation of green. I'm trying to shift away from green. It's a preference really, right? So I'll drop that there. Sometimes not all the way, sometimes it'll be right here, but for this sake, I'll drop it back here. The blues I'd shift more to a cyan. The aqua I'd shift here more to the cyan. Pretty much everything else it'll remain the same. Saturation, this is really something you'll have to play around with and find your style. I will probably saturate that. I desaturate orange a bit, right? And just so that the skin doesn't. Sometimes when you kick up the saturation on the basic panel, the skin might look funny. You can address that here. For luminance, I will ever so slightly kick up orange. I will drop down reds. I want the reds to be the nice dark saturated red. Everything else I'd leave the same here. So that's looking good so far. Now the next panel is color grading. Now this is where some of the magic lies, or majority of it really depends on your editing technique, right? But this is where you can really get creative. Color grading will affect your shadows, midtones, and highlights. You can look at them here all at the same time from here, or you can jump into each individual section or do it all at the same time. But what I do is I usually go to my shadows, right? And I'd go for a bit of a teal and orange look. So from here, you can go shift towards like the teal on the shadows, and you can see that change right there. If we go back and go back to that before and after, there is a big change right there. But I feel like it's introduced a bit of green. So I'm going to want to bring that back down here, closer to blue. Yeah, right there. And then for the highlights, I'm going to want to go over to more orange, right? Closer to yellow. Oh, darn it. Kick up the saturation a bit there. Perfect. So before and after. So there we got a nice warm look and a bit of a actually nice color. Hold on, let me just add a bit more saturation to it. There we go. Right there, that looks great. So if we go to before and after right here, very big difference. Here's our before and here's our after, right? Very nice colors. Here it looks a bit flat. It's raw. We're shooting in raw, so the colors look a bit flat. But here we come back and add a bit of color, add a bit of contrast, and it looks great. And you want to spend your time on this. I usually spend anywhere between 5 to 15 minutes doing edits. But again, that might vary with you, because once you find your colors that you like, you want to go ahead and create a preset. Usually it's when you find an HSL combination, a color grading combination, that's when you want to go in and make those edits, or rather save them, so that it saves your color palette, so to speak. Now I'm going to go through a few more things here. Lens correction. These are just for removing like chromatic aberration and whatnot. We can turn that on, turn that off. It really doesn't make that big of a difference unless you really have a lens that has a lot of chromatic aberration. Effects, I don't use like vignetting and all that. I don't use effects. Calibration, though, this is something else, and you have to really play around with it to figure out your style here. But you can adjust the tint on the shadows, as you can see here, right? It gives more like film look. You can adjust your reds, greens, and blues. Now, I'm no expert on this. I can't break it down to an exact science, but it's very different in terms of how it shifts these colors on the HSL and on calibration. If we shift our reds, you can see how that affects the image right there. So it's great to make corrections in terms of like if you've got your white balance dialed in, but the skin tones don't look good, you can make adjustments here for that. You can come over to the green slider here that makes adjustments as well. You can see how that affects it, right? You can even change the saturation of reds, right? And blue. You can see how that works as well. Not so good over there. You can change the saturation of that. So I'd probably do something like this. I'd probably kick up the saturation here for the blues and probably give it a bit of a red tint. Too much. That does look good, yeah. So again, quick comparison before and after. Now I'm going to play around with this for a bit more, and we're going to just jump cut to after I play around and make the edits. So yeah, let's do this. All right, so I've dialed in a bit more of my settings here. I've got it to where I wanted to look, and we can do a bit of a before and after, and that's a stark difference right there, right? The colors really pop, but I want to show you a nice little technique that I do, and that involves masking here on Lightroom. Lightroom has some amazing masking effects that utilizes AI, and we can go ahead and do things like select the background and make edits to the colors. It's loading that up here. So there, and it does a pretty good job in selecting. We've got to miss the section here on your face, but it does a good job in masking out like the background or masking out the subject and all that. But that allows us to go in, make adjustments to temperature and all that, and tone curve as well, and all these effects here without messing up other things. So we might want to shift the temperature, the tint, the hue, but not affect the color of the skin tone. We can do that here. So I'm going to make a few more edits here, and yeah, let's see how it turns out. And there we go. So I did do a few things in terms of the background. I shifted the tint and some of the coloring there, but we really come up with a nice photo. Very stylized look, and it's a stark contrast difference from the actual raw photo we took. So yeah, that's about it. That's my process. That would take me anywhere between 15 to 30 minutes. It really depends. Probably took me that long now because I'm talking to you guys and trying to show you things. But in reality, once you get used to things, you can probably do edits in 10 to 15 minutes, especially if you have things done as presets. So there you go. I hope that this was something you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions in terms of editing within Lightroom, or maybe if we take things out of Lightroom and go to Photoshop, just let me know, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.